But I share. Isn't that nice of me?
She does share.
This is our super special day that we love of the month when Stacy Cross, our health specialist, look at me, I got that without even looking at anything.
You got it wrong. I'm not a health specialist.
Damn it.
Support specialist. I love how you immediately congratulated yourself for getting it right, even though you 100% did not.
Welcome to real life. No, I love it. Welcome to real life, where we talk about real things and we admit our mistakes publicly. And actually, that really is kind of what we do. We tell you guys really what's going on. We're not fancy yoga model influencers. We're just real people like you.
You will never see us walking down the street in our sports bras. I can guarantee that.
Not this one. Nope.
Now, if I was 20, that's a whole different story.
Maybe.
But I'm not.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it is the Starch Solution Talk, as always. And so we thought we were going to get new pictures for Are You Scared of the Starch Solution? Because when Cheryl and I do that, that's from an older trip to Disney for the Halloween party. Mm-hmm. But we got rained out a photo, so you still have the same old photo. Vegan knowledge. JJ says even Halloween sports bras. I'm like, you know how to tempt a girl, don't you? Because we came back from our big trip, so a lot of you guys know. There are videos up of the in the Hudson Valley of the Great Pumpkin Blaze. We took a walk in Salem, so if you feel like you're a little bored on your treadmill, go take a walk with us around Salem. You guys got to see all the things. Jeremy says, welcome home. I appreciate that. But so here we are, and yes, I am everything Halloween. And I bought 2 amazing Halloween purses. I got some Halloween clothes. They will be seen, I promise you. We're talking about the Starch Solution. So if you have Starch Solution questions, so that would be Dr. McDougall's program, the late Dr. McDougall, and Heather McDougall is in charge now. And you see that Tiffany comes on once a month now, and Stacy, and we love them both. Stacy has been with us the longest, so. Although Tiffany loves some Halloween, so I feel like we're bonding. We're bonding.
All right,
for sure.
Here's the deal. I also love Halloween. You've never asked me about it. You've never asked me to talk about Halloween. Okay? Not that I'm jealous or bitter about you guys' conversation with Tiffany about Halloween. But you've never even mentioned Halloween to me on a live call. So
not on a live call.
I also love Halloween. Okay.
Yay!
Let it be known.
I love this conversation already today.
It's going great.
Right? I'm like, it really is just like hanging out with friends. Because I always say, I know the best people, and that's why I bring them on. And look, this is amazing. Yeah. So one of the things, and I think we were talking about this a little bit with Tiffany, Jesus, I just had a piece of toast.
You need to finish that.
This is my 3rd tea. I don't know what's up with me today.
That explains so much. No, I'm kidding.
I am feeling this great, focus getting ready to happen, but it's just so far away. And we were talking a little bit about, Max passing, Cheryl got laid off. All of this was kind of in a couple of weeks. So we were not working the Starch Solution in the best, most possible way ever. And we did give ourselves just a little bit of wiggle room while we were traveling. And now we are getting back on things. And that's one of the things you guys are going to see. I'm going to start doing some dinners where we're making really easy Starch Solution compliant dinners and things like that. So that may also be something you want to, because we were kind of talking about, forgiving yourself for kind of a lot, I can do one thing, one bad thing happens, can be on it. 2, 3, because then I had to put off my book, which I was not expecting to be an emotional dilemma, and evidently it is. One of the things we did talk a little bit about, and I want to get your views too on, like, let's talk about maybe you messed up, maybe you found your Halloween candy when you thought you hid it really well, or something happened, and kind of like how to talk to yourself about getting back on, and how, because you're so good about that. Like, that was one of the things that was my favorite part about you in the program, was kind of like, well, things are going to happen, and it's how you recover from those things. And for us, we were very lucky to have 2 weeks that we were going to that conference. We got to do vacation-y things. Kind of, it's not always possible or recommended, if you have a lot of things going, just to leave your house and then come back and things will be different, because usually they're not. But this was about giving her time to process about the loss of her job and the change, and kind of to give us both a little bit of time to process all the changes. So that, just so for everybody listening, that's why I was kind of like, well, that's going to give us a different space to be in, and that probably will help the process.
Yeah, but it was my first Workfree for my ex-company vacation that I've had in 17 and a half years. So
how did that feel?
The first few days were very weird. It felt very weird driving in the car and things like that. Like, I just kept feeling like,
she kept checking her phone.
I kept checking my phone.
And she was getting in trouble, but not for what she thought. I'm like, stop checking your phone. What are you doing?
I kept feeling like I was gonna miss something, kind of thing, and I was just very fidgety. And then as the time went on, then I was kind of like, I think that first night that I didn't have to do any of the build process or anything, I was just kind of like, I was tired and I was ready to go to bed, and I could just go to bed. I didn't have to sit there and wait for something to finish at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was 10 o'clock, and I was like, I'm going to bed. And I haven't been able to do that on a Thursday for 17 and a half years, so it was kind of fun. And then from there, I just started feeling kind of like, hey, this is kind of cool. And then I think what really drove it home for me was on the way home. Usually, we've been known to take our time on the front end of a trip, but on the back end of the trip, I'm usually like, we gotta rush and get home, because we gotta get the dog, and we've got to get me ready, because I got something I gotta do for work tonight, and I got a bunch of reports I need to run, so I'm ready for work tomorrow morning. And so we just...
And it stresses me out. You would think she is the person stressed out. So at that point, because I work, I do newsletters and posts and stuff when we're in the car, but then she's like, got the loud music, and I'm like, you're undoing all my vacation.
We gotta get there. We're gonna go home right now, and doesn't matter how many hours it is. I'm just like, we're gonna get there. And this time we were able to just kind of like drive 4 hours and stop and goof off and spend the night, and then drive 4 hours and stop and goof off and spend the night. And it was very, very relaxed.
Your mic may be off, because someone says can't hear Cheryl very well.
Was it?
But
Maybe.
yes.
Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
can hear you just fine, but maybe.
I think it's because my mic is pointing at her. So
Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
So anyhow, that I started really like feeling into it, and like I woke up the last hotel we stayed at. I woke up early in the morning before her and started working on a newsletter, and just like kind of like picking up what my new responsibilities are going to be, which she hasn't had a lot of time to teach me anything, but I think I've been writing stuff down so that I don't have to ask her lots of questions, so she can just go into book mode and do her thing.
So you want to start talking to some about what you would say to us, or anyone who's maybe like, oh, summer's over, now it's all the holidays, maybe I want to give up, or maybe I'm not sure what I want to do.
Ooh, well, I would say figuring out what you want to do is very important. Knowing, especially right now, you guys, we are right on the brink of all of the holidays. In a week from today is Halloween, and that begins sort of the whole food-centric holiday season. I think it's really important and valuable to start assessing right now, what do I want to do over the holidays? Am I trying to continue on with my normal weight loss diet? Am I trying to maintain my weight through the holidays? Am I just trying to maintain my sanity through the holidays? And what will that look like? Intentionality is a huge piece of how I personally feel like I was able to finally succeed with my weight loss. And intentionality is something that I think we all have to grab a hold of in order to have success in this arena of health, the health and wellness journey, whether you're trying to lose weight or not. Setting your intentions clearly, simply out, whether you write them down, you journal them, you put them in an online format somewhere, speaking out or laying out your intentions of what you're trying to do, it's incredibly valuable. Going into the holidays, I think it's valuable to say what your intentions are in terms of special foods, special meals. If you celebrate with big meals with family members and things like that, is it really realistic for every single person who's listening to this call to go into the holidays thinking, I'm going to be 100% maximum weight loss, McDougall style of eating all the way through the holidays? No, that may not be a great intention or a very realistic intention for everybody. That may work for some. And it all depends. You got to look at your schedule. You got to look at what's coming up, what the meal plan is going to be. If you're going to a potluck, you have to decide, am I going to partake in some of the foods that people bring that obviously may have a little oil or a little butter or whatever? Only you can decide that for yourself. But I think the intentionality of planning ahead, or at least, coming up with a approach ahead of time, takes some of the potential pitfalls out of the holidays. The pitfalls being, oops, here we are at Thanksgiving dinner and there's nothing on this table that I can eat that's McDougall. So instead, I'm just going to eat my weight in macaroni and cheese or, whatever. It's like, you don't want the holidays to happen to you, right? And we're talking about eating, obviously. You don't want them to happen to you. You don't want to be a victim of a eating situation. You want to be in control and you want to decide and determine ahead of time what that will look like for you. Perfection is not the goal for most, if anyone at all. It shouldn't be, because perfection doesn't exist. And so it's probably not aiding you well to expect to be perfect through the holidays. But what kinds of exceptions, if any, do you plan to make? What will they be like? I'll give you guys an example. For me personally, I really, really try to stick with my normal McDougall eating 100% of the time outside of that holiday's meal itself. And then when it comes to that holiday's meal, for example, Thanksgiving. For me, Thanksgiving dinner is no longer Thanksgiving dinner, Thanksgiving post-dinner, day after Thanksgiving breakfast, in like days long and weeks long, like it used to be, where you're eating all the wonderful foods, you're pulling them back out of the fridge over and over and over again and partaking in the whole Thanksgiving dinner all over again. For me, I decided a couple years ago, hey, I'm limiting it to the one meal. One meal. One meal is not going to make or break you. So, and then you decide within that one meal, if you are making exceptions or you're indulging in foods that are richer than you normally would have, what those exceptions are and where your line is. So being ready to set simple, clear boundaries for yourself is a great way to make sure you're not completely derailed by the holidays. I don't know if I'm realizing I don't think I actually answered the question. Was that
I think you did.
Good enough? Okay.
It's a conversation more than a question.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I like one of the points that you were saying too, that like a holiday meal turns into a lot of meals. Like it'll be like, oh, well, we're going to usually we go to the Triangle Vegetarian Society Thanksgiving. Jesus. I don't know what's going on with me. Just, I'm taking a deep breath. Take a deep breath with me. No! That's just
Oh
Earl
my
Grey
gosh.
tea, man. Earl Grey tea and some homemade soy milk. But it is really easy to go, oh, especially if you're making Thanksgiving, then maybe you make special Thanksgiving muffins for breakfast for people who are coming over to help you. And it is always the next meal. And then sometimes I've gotten invited to the day after where everyone brings leftovers. And it just kind of continues and continues. So I think that's something we don't consciously think about. So I like the idea that you did that. And I also like the idea that you're saying, what's your goal? Is your goal to maintain through this? Is your goal to kind of try to keep losing? And that's something you've talked to us about before too. Like when you're on this vacation, are you okay if you don't lose any weight and you're just maintaining? And or is it okay if you gain 2 pounds? And I think it is interesting to kind of play with that and have that as a more particular goal, if that makes sense. So I think that's awesome. Okay, here we go. Let's ask a couple of questions. We have one question do you want to get that one over with, or do you want to do that one late? Well, not get it over with.
Yeah.
Make sure that it gets checked off the list is what I meant.
Let's check it out. Let's get to it right away, because I'm interested to hearing about this too.
Okay, and I will.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
the question is, please provide dietary advice for thinning hair.
Yes. Okay, so thinning hair. All right, first of all, anytime you change your diet in any substantial way, it is very natural to have some loss of hair. Interestingly, people are really surprised to hear that because I guess it's just not something we talk about much, but you do experience hair loss. Some people do when they change their diet, whether it's for the good, the bad, or the ugly. And so if that's what's going on, if you're losing hair because of a recent change in your diet, it will stop. Dr. McDougall used to tell people all the time, do you still have enough hair on your head? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, don't worry about it, because you're also always producing more hair. So if you're noticing hair loss, like acute, just recent hair loss, it will come back, it will settle down, it will stop falling out. Also, another thing is people do notice a cyclical seasonal hair loss where they tend to lose more hair as it gets warmer outside. And during the summer months, it's sort of like you're shedding. That also is very natural. There also is just as we age, we tend to thin out. My hair is certainly thinner than it was 20 years ago. And that is also very natural. But if you're finding that my goodness, like if you're having like bald spots all of a sudden and they weren't there before and that you're not accustomed to having, or you're losing substantial amounts of hair such that you can tell when you look at your head, holy cow, where's all my hair? You might want to go and have your hormones checked, because that can be a hormonal shift that can be due to thyroid issues and some other medical conditions that could be contributing to that. But in terms of dietary advice, the dietary advice I can give you is continue to eat a whole foods, plant-based, starch-centered diet with the addition of fruits and vegetables. It is going to give you every nutrient that you need, and all of the good stuff that promotes regeneration, healing, all of those things in your body that, in theory would help you not lose hair that in the way that other things in your diet might. Like if you have a really garbage centered diet and you're not getting, the normal typical vitamins and nutrients that you get from a plant centered diet, then in theory that could cause all kinds of problems in your body. So all of this is not, any concrete specific advice. It's just keep eating this way, because it is always the most health promoting way. But like, I know that some people are putting in the comments section, all these different like pumpkin seeds and zinc and all this stuff. I don't know any of that. I mean, I don't know any of that to be like scientifically proven to work. And so that's why you don't hear me saying things like that, because I'm just going to give you the information that I know is true and backed by science. But yeah, I hope that helps a little bit. Just stick with your good diet, your good healthy diet. That's definitely going to help you in every area.
I think that helps a lot, right? And I'm not sure because I didn't know that when you change a diet, your hair might thin. That's not something I've heard
Yeah.
either. So I think
It's
that's
not that it thins. Well, it does thin, but it's hair loss.
hair
So
loss.
that's when people talk about, like, they shampoo their hair and they get like giant clumps of hair out. And they're like, oh my gosh, all my hair is falling out. And oftentimes they're like, oh no, the vegan diet is causing my hair to fall out. And we're
And I
like,
have heard
well,
that.
yeah, it's actually any diet change. Like when people do keto, they report the same thing. When they do, any diet change at all. So that's highly common.
That's really interesting. Marcus, who's a friend of ours from ECAM, so he was at the conference. He's in Switzerland. There were two things he said. One, he said about the hair, my hair is not thinning, it's just saying goodbye. Laugh out loud.
That happens too sometimes. Yes.
And another thing he was saying is that I thought was interesting. It's not about gaining weight between Christmas and New Year's Eve. It's about what happens between New Year's Eve and Christmas.
Right. Well,
No?
I'm going to push
Okay.
back a tiny bit. I do agree that between New Year's Eve and Christmas, obviously or New Year's and Christmas, that's a larger portion of the year. So like, yeah, what you eat during that time does matter. But I will say you can do a lot of damage during the holiday season. And if you're trying to lose weight, and let's say you have 40 pounds to lose, but at the holidays you always gain 20, you're really like fighting an uphill battle. If you do what a typical American or Western world person would do during the holidays, which is pack on 5-10 pounds. So I would say, even if you're not like gunning it to try to lose weight during the holidays, I think maintaining your weight is a really worthy goal. I think many of us know what it feels like to wake up the next year and go, gosh darn it. I have so much ground to make up for because I overindulged during the holidays. So I think maintenance is a great, great worthy goal during the holidays if you feel that that's possible for you.
I like the way you explain that a lot because you can do a lot of damage. That's true,
Yeah,
because
so much.
there's just so many things to think about. And I also, and it's good to kind of keep an idea all year long. Like right now we're talking about holidays, but earlier this year we talked about like going on vacations. And kind of like one of the things you say is when you go through the 12-day program, you get someone for a year and you kind of go through most of their life cycle within that year. And I just think it's on everybody's minds right now, because like right now, Halloween candy is in people's houses. We don't have trick-or-treaters, so I'll make something fun for us. I'm doing a Halloween class for Kathy's Cooking Club on Saturday, and we're making coffin loaves, and we're making stuffed zucchini muffins, or not muffins, mummies, and some things like that. But I think a lot of people then, if you have a lot of kids, like if you do 200 kids, that's a lot of candy to have in your house. And I can tell you that would give me pause. So everybody's situation could be very different as well. Like we've done things before where we've gotten cool toys. So like over the pandemic, we had some kids move into the neighborhood, obviously with their parents. And so we made some little bags, and I was like, we put a couple of pieces of candy in it, but I put our address so they would know where it came from, because I was like, that's unusual to have just a random bag of Halloween on your door. But so kind of from there, and then it really just ramps up so fast. And then all of a sudden it's January 1st. You're like, oh, I'm supposed to be making my New Year's resolutions. And it's almost like a blackout period, or it can be.
Yeah. Can I speak about the Halloween candy for just a minute?
Oh, yeah.
I've made some good ground in this area. So personally, So a few years ago, when I was in the thick of all of my weight loss struggles and how long I had been working so hard to lose weight, Halloween was approaching and people were talking about like, oh, how do you not just eat all the Halloween candy in your house and all this stuff? And it occurred to me, and this is like obvious, but just, it was like this light bulb moment for me. Okay, wait a minute. Halloween candy, you can't trick me. Halloween candy isn't anything special. It's just all the same candy in a black and orange wrapper. It's the same thing. I can get a Snickers bar anytime. I can get a Kit Kat, they're not special. Halloween candy is not special. So if I'm going to make an exception for something, I want it to be something special that I truly only can have once a year, that I know that I love and I look forward to. Like I've given my example of my mother-in-law's pecan pie that she makes, something like that it's like she only makes this at Thanksgiving. And so I'm going to have a small slice of it because I really look forward to it all year. But Halloween candy isn't that. I can literally get a Snickers bar any day of any week, anytime. And I try to avoid doing that. So why am I so compelled at Halloween to open these little black and orange wrappers and just pop one after the other? The other thing I know about myself is that everybody has some foods that are like this. Halloween candy is interesting, or candy in general is interesting for me personally, because I could take it or leave it. I don't really care that much about candy until I have that first one. And then it's all over. And I just know that about myself. I can't eat just one. I will eat them until they're gone. And if I can't do it all in one day, then I will do it for many days. However many days it takes to empty the house of Halloween candy, I will do it. However, like I said, if I don't open that first one, I'm fine. I'm not much of a candy person to begin with. So a few years ago, armed with all of these light bulb realizations, I made a decision that I do not open one piece of Halloween candy. I don't. And I haven't done it. I mean, I think maybe last year I made an exception. Maybe. But like this year, this girl isn't eating any Halloween candy. And I'm not saying that you need to make that your policy too, but this is what this whole journey is about realizing who you are, what your personal, food triggers are, what sets you off, what's not a big deal. You bring a bag of chips here, I'm fine. I'm never going to overindulge in chips. It's just that's not my personal poison. But if you bring sweets in here, I know what things are going to cause me a problem, what are not. Halloween candy is totally benign to me until I eat the first one. Wow, that is really good data to know about myself in order to inform my decisions in the future so that I can always be getting stronger in this area.
And that goes back to what you were saying before, though, like know your goals, know yourself, kind of have an idea, because whereas Stacy's trip up is candy, mine is the crunchy thing. So if crunchy things come up, and which means if chips are around, I'm going to want them. Yeah. But it's the same thing. I do okay, and I don't have chips for months and months and months, and I don't think about it. And then some comes with a sandwich that I didn't know was coming, or something like that. But if you know what's going on, it makes it so much easier. And some people were saying, just no candy in the house makes it easier. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I will say, I know last year, and they have them at Costco again. Chef AJ was giving out the little mini That's It fruit bars, which is dried fruit. Yes. They're and those are actually are good. I keep them, like when we travel, I have those in case we are like have an emergency. and they're not so tasty for us that we're going to be like, oh, we got the bag. It's just like, okay, no, we need to eat. Let's have one of those.
Those things are definitely like, okay, this is just.
She doesn't like them very much.
But I need this.
But I think they're tasty. But I don't get, it doesn't trigger any kind of big cravings that I would have or something like that. But so if you want to give out something that's not a toothbrush or a pamphlet or how to eat better, which, at this point, we already know that we can't talk our relatives into eating the way that we would hope they would. We certainly can't talk a 5-year-old into it, right?
Yeah. Well, and also it's like, it just depends on how much you care about if your house gets egged. It's like if you're giving out toothbrushes, you need to know that there's a very real possibility that people are going to show up and egg your house. They are
true.
not going to like that. And so it's almost better if you've decided to give out toothbrushes, just a recommendation, just turn off your lights and lock your door and just don't give out anything at all, because you probably would have less of a chance of getting your house egged.
Well, and they have like at Target, and actually I'm sure on Temu or any of these places, they had little parachute guys. And so you take the parachute and whoosh, and they were like, I don't know, I think it was like $3 or $4 for like 40 of them or something. Same thing with those things that you splat on the wall that don't leave a nasty thing that kind of roll down. Like, I find that sometimes small toys, they may not be like super excited, but they're not going to egg your house for that. You've given them some value.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I do agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of sad that we're not in the time. I mean, even when I was a young whippersnapper, it was not the time of homemade goodies, right? Like if it's your next door neighbor, you could give them a cookie, but the rest of the world, you can't give a homemade cookie. So you can't even make, because if you are having a party or something, and you want to do some treats, you could do this whole food plant-based no oil. I do dates, and I either stuff a pretzel in there, and you could do a gluten-free pretzel or a couple of peanuts. And then you could roll it in cocoa. Sometimes I'll dip it in chocolate if I'm being extravagant, or if it's for presents for people. And you can stick little legs on it and have chocolate-covered cockroaches. That's what I...
Wow. Sounds great.
You're like, sign me up. And then you bite into it and it goes crunch. And dates look kind of like...
Oh, my goodness.
It's delightful. And I know that we can make these for Stacy because she's not going to eat 800 cockroaches, right? Or even...
I would eat that. Okay, so you bring up an important point. So you were talking about the that's just it bars or whatever, and like handing out stuff that that is healthy. But you have to realize your body and your mind will attach to whatever is the richest option available to you in your environment that appeals to you. And so I can't even tell you how many people I've had through the McDougall program who are like, I am totally addicted to dates, or I am totally addicted to nuts. I can't stop eating dried mango, things like that. And so, don't just make sure that if you're replacing the candy with something else healthy, that you're not setting yourself up for just as much of a struggle as you would have if you had just gotten candy. And I realized too, obviously, like no candy in your house. Keeping your environment clean is always the best option for staying out of stuff you don't want to be eating. Hands down, no question at all. Keeping the stuff out of your house is the best policy. But if you're like me, or, you have a situation like this, I have 4 kids who will trick or treat, which is an obscene amount of candy that will end up at my house at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that you're without hope. It just means your boundary line is going to have to be different. So one person's boundary line may be, it can't be in this house. Okay, well, what if it is going to be in your house? Where can you draw your boundary? Like I said, my boundary is I don't open one single piece. Your boundary may be you give it to your significant other and they hide it from you. Your boundary may be everybody gets to have their candy for 2 days and then it gets donated or thrown away or whatever. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to being intentional and making a plan ahead of time so that you don't get smacked across the face by these things in real time when they're happening. You have a plan ahead of time. You're anticipating the struggle and you're giving yourself a way out of it that is realistic and reasonable for you personally.
Sorry for the big
Also,
pauses. Yeah.
I also want to say I would absolutely have eaten every one of those cockroaches in the seconds before you said that they were cockroaches. And then the minute you were like, they're little cockroaches, I was like, I'm out. Every ingredient in there sounds amazing. But then the thought of crunching down on one of those, it's just not for me. But it's adorable. I love the idea.
No, and that makes total sense. And I'm sorry, Cheryl is going to help a friend of ours right now, so that's why she disappeared and why I was so let me stop looking at that. I think it's all really interesting, though, the way that we're talking about this. And one of the things that I love to do, especially with you, Stacy, is to kind of have these conversations about ideas that we're not really thinking about. We're just thinking, oh, I'm going to be really good and I'm going to meet my goals. And then,
exactly.
Which is a great mindset. It's okay sometimes, and I do it all the time. You take a deep breath and you're like, oh, I'm making it through this. But then there's going to be a time, when this is a lifetime thing versus a 3-month thing. That's when you do have to think about, well, what's okay with me now, and what can I do differently? So let's do a couple of questions because there's a whole bunch of questions.
Oh, perfect.
And not necessarily about this, though. So
Fine.
TS is saying, is there an easy way to print out, study, and give to my doctor why starches are not bad for type 2 diabetes, or where I might find something legit online?
Hold on, I just realized I need to plug in my computer. Yes, let me think about what that would be. So just to make sure that everybody understands, let me just say real quickly the answer to that question. Why starches are not bad for someone with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. So oftentimes the mainstream conventional wisdom right now, guidance that is given to people who are either pre-diabetic or diabetic, type 2, they are told to avoid starch and specifically avoid carbohydrates, because what happens is when you eat carbohydrates, your blood glucose level increases. And the way that we know you have prediabetes or diabetes is because you are sustaining a high blood glucose level that we know is problematic, can cause end organ problems and damage and all kinds of wreak havoc in your body, put you at risk for heart disease and heart attacks and strokes and all kinds of stuff. Okay, that's why diabetes is bad. We want to avoid it. We want to keep our fasting blood glucose nice and steady and low. All right, but the problem is, and this is an illustration that Dr. McDougall used to give all the time that I just thought was so powerful and effective, is let's say that I go into the bathroom and I plug the sink, right? So I pull the plug in, so it's plugged up, and I turn the faucet on. And I turn the faucet on, and of course, then the sink will fill with water, and then it will begin to overflow with water, and the water is falling to the ground, and it's flooding the bathroom. So going after the carbohydrate, in the case of a diabetic, to try to keep their blood glucose level low is the same thing as if I went in there into that flooded bathroom with towels and started sopping up the water. It's only solving the surface level issue that alerted us to the problem, but it's not solving the problem. The problem being that the sink is plugged up and the faucet is on. What I need to do is unplug the sink and turn off the faucet. That's how you solve that actual problem, not sopping up the water on the floor. Same in the case of the blood glucose for a diabetic or pre-diabetic. If you're just trying to control your eating to keep your blood glucose levels low, you're not solving the problem of diabetes, which is fat. It's dietary fat and it's body fat. So what happens in the case of diabetes is that you are consuming a high fat diet, or you have a lot of body fat, and your body has taken your excess dietary fat and stuffed it into your cells of your body all over the place. in your liver cells, in your muscle cells. It's primarily muscle cells, right? It's all over the place. Your cells are globbed up with fat, full. And that creates insulin resistance. Insulin is the vehicle that goes, just imagine a little dump truck. It goes and scoops up your blood glucose and it escorts it into your cells to be used as energy by your body. Glucose is your body's naturally preferred fuel source, okay? And so when you eat, like let's say you eat pasta, your blood glucose rises. Your pancreas responds by letting insulin out into your bloodstream, and the insulin's job is to go get that glucose and escort it into the cell to be used as energy. The problem is when your cells are all globbed up with fat, the insulin can't get in. It can't open the cell and dump the glucose in there, so that glucose stays in your bloodstream at an elevated level. And it takes a while for it to come down, much longer than a normal person, okay? So the solution is you need to take in less dietary fat and you need to lose body fat, which you will naturally do when you're eating the McDougall way. You won't have to weigh or measure your food or count calories or macros or micros or anything like that. It will naturally all happen if you're staying consistent and sticking with the McDougall plan, which is starch centered with the addition of fruits and vegetables for taste and variety. So that's the answer to TS's question. That's the answer to the question of why eating carbohydrates is not the problem for people who have diabetes. The problem for people who have diabetes, and really all of us, is too much dietary fat and too much body fat. And so we bring those things down. It all happens in unison beautifully together when we eat this way. And then the diabetes can either reverse or be kept under control. So in terms of where to find that online, Kathy, I'll have to get back to you because I need to do some sleuthing to figure out what would be the best resource for printing that out and taking it to your doctor, because it sounded like she wanted something that was short.
Yeah, actually, it would be great because I know you come back after and answer some questions. If you could put a couple of links in, that would be amazing. Sure. And then everybody could see them. Because I do think it's so helpful to have something that you can bring to your doctor. And if your doctor isn't whole food plant-based, one of the things that we've noticed, and we love our doctor, she is not. She is happy to look at some of the stuff we've done. It may be a little harder to get buy-in, but they may just be like, we'll try this and see what your numbers are doing. So they're most likely going to monitor those numbers. And if you're doing something and it improves, they're going to tell you to keep doing it. That's what my experience is, and I'm seeing with friends that I've talked to now. So they don't usually go, oh, give me the details so I can tell all my other patients, because all of the other patients aren't necessarily going to stick with it the way you are. Would you say that that's
I think if people really, I think if people really understood the simplicity of the diet that we promote, they would do it. And if they really believed that it would fix them and their problems and give them the health that they're looking for, they would do it. I just think, unfortunately, the message flies in the face of what is mainstream advice right now, dietary advice. And so people just don't believe. They just go, no, there's no way. There's no way that eating potatoes is going to result in weight loss. There's no way, And I also think it is a big pill to swallow to go, I'm just going to need to go ahead and mostly pretty much remove a food group, or two. That's tough for people who are not ready. The people who do this, it's because they are ready. And oftentimes they are desperate. They've exhausted all their other options. They've tried so many different other things. I talked to somebody just the other day. I mean, she is maxed out on her blood pressure medications. There's nowhere else to go to try to bring her blood pressure down. It's my favorite kind of patient to have come through the program because it is so quick. Most of the time it's so quick to see the changes in things like blood pressure and cholesterol and stuff like that. But oftentimes people don't make it to us until they've hit the end of the road, and the end of their personal rope. Having said that, almost every patient that I see in the McDougall program for which that is the case says to me at some point, I wish I had done this decades ago. I wish I had done this before I got sick. It would have saved me so much heartache, money, time, worry. It would have saved me years of being really unhappy in my body and in and out of doctor's offices at surgery centers and all of that. So, as hard as it is to want to make a drastic change before you even really have any massive problems, look at the ways that your body is whispering to you. Even if it hasn't come and hit you over the head with a hammer, like cancer or a heart attack or an autoimmune illness, what are the small, subtle ways your body's telling you that this way that you're living is not working? Headaches, chronic headaches, problems with sleeping, even depression, things like that can be your body's little ways of whispering to you, you were made for more. You were made for better than this.
I totally agree. And I think the people who are watching this are the people who are ready into doing things.
Awesome.
Because like the people I'm talking about too, just so everybody knows, like when Cheryl goes to the doctor, like one of the things she was like, why don't they ask us what's going on? And I'm like, just think about your relatives who aren't willing to give up cheese or who aren't willing, and who are maybe lactose intolerant. And they're like, well, this is just going to be the way it's going to be. And that's what I meant. But I do agree. I've never heard anyone who was like, oh, I wish I would have waited another month to do this. It's always, oh, I wish I had done it before. Yeah. So Mary Becker says, my doctor said if I was going to eat whole food plant-based to add soybeans and pea protein. I said I did not like tofu. She said, I mean soybeans. She wants to know why it's so hard to find cooked soybeans, which I can address. But then maybe we can address some other stuff behind that as far as like, do you have to add in soy with whole food plant-based? And you can find more soybeans every once in a while. Black soybeans would be you might be able to find canned. I've done that. They're pretty delicious in a salad. You can buy dry black soybeans or regular soybeans. Both are fine. The organic ones are back at Amazon. So if you're on the newsletter, I've been putting a link there because I get asked, where do I get soybeans so much? Because I make my own soy milk. You would cook it just like a bean. You would soak it, cook it, and then you could get a pound or more. You can get a pound at the Asian market, cook them, freeze them in smaller portions, and then use them how you want if you wanted to. And it's my understanding, and Stacy, you may have more information about this, is like, I think soybeans are slightly higher in protein than some other beans. It's also higher in fat.
Yeah, it is. It's higher. Well, yes. Oftentimes though, when a doctor is saying something like that, it's because they just don't know a lot about plant-based nutrition, and they just know that soy is high in protein and fat. That's probably what they're thinking. And they know, pea protein is a type of protein powder, that I can recommend to somebody who has a plant-based diet. So it's usually just based on just limited understanding of what levels of protein are available with what foods. So the highest in protein foods are always plant-based, are always going to be your lentils, your legumes and your beans, always. And soy falls in that. Soy is a pea, and it falls in that category. And then the next highest is whole grains. So in terms of where we get our protein, first of all plant foods have protein in different quantities, but the highest are going to be your lentils and beans. Your legumes and beans. And then second highest would be whole grains. And you get plenty. If you do eat a well-balanced, fruits, vegetables, and water-rich cooked starches, you will get enough protein. We don't have people walking around much. Think about it. When was the last time you heard of somebody suffering from a protein deficiency? All of our, really, for the most part, in the Western world and in the United States, our diseases are of dietary excess, not dietary insufficiency. We are not undernourished or malnourished. We are overnourished.
That makes total sense. And the only person, I know very few people who do have to pay attention to their protein. Apple, who usually shows up here, has some sort of condition, and she does have to eat a little bit more. She eats it just fine. She meets that goal just fine doing a whole food, plant-based, no oil diet. But if one of the things, if you're like, soybeans are too crazy, if you're willing to go to the Indian market, they have dry yellow peas, whole little yellow peas, and you could make your milk with that if you wanted to, or use them in a soup, just like any other bean too. I know sometimes, and especially lately, I think there are a couple of people that are talking more about protein powders, and Complement, which is a vitamin company that's vegan, has a protein powder. So we're seeing more of that talked about. And so when she was saying peas and soy, you often hear that talked about too. Like, so most of the time when people are saying pea protein, they mean pea protein powder or a powdered supplement. Whereas I was saying you can get the peas and you can eat them, right?
Yeah.
And you've said before too, like some of the powders you felt like could have some potential effects on the body that were not positive.
Yeah. So what happens is when you highly process even a plant food, so let's say in this case peas, you are isolating the protein from the pea, and then you're processing it and you're turning it into a powdered substance. It's just very, very easy to eat too much protein, and too much protein is problematic. In fact, we're seeing a ton right now, the result of people just maxing out their, I'm going to eat, 100 or 200 grams of protein a day. And what happens is it causes kidney damage. And, high levels of protein in your body are not good. And the way that you get those unnaturally high levels of protein intake is through these products that are made from what would have been a totally fine thing. It's just like any other highly processed food. The reason why we promote whole plant foods is because they come intact with fiber, water, bulk, vitamins and nutrients. Yes, protein, fat, like those things, and the amounts of each of those elements and minerals and vitamins are natural. And so when we isolate protein out of even a really nice, good quality plant source, you've got isolated, concentrated protein, which your body is not accustomed to having to process. Your body is not designed and built to process 50 grams of protein in the form of a shake. It's just never in our natural human history have we ever asked that of our bodies. And so just think about it that way. Try to approach it in your own mind from like a common sense standpoint. Like, does it make common sense to expect that I'm somehow better off if I isolate, hydrolyze this protein and put a product like that into my body than I would be if I just ate it in its whole natural form? And usually the answer is no, I'm not better off by the processing of that plant. I'd be better off eating the whole plant.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So Video 1000 Nights was kind of curious about in general, but was saying how many people here take vitamin D or a multivitamin. And I take vitamin D, and so does Cheryl, because our vitamin D levels are like Hobbit level. Like, it gets better with vitamin D. Finally, one time Cheryl's got high, so she got to stop taking it for a little while, but then it went right back down into the gutter. Even if I'm outside in the sun, that's not enough for me personally. And I believe in the Dr. McDougall program, we talk about taking B12 and vitamin D, I think. No?
Well, vitamin D is not one that we recommend to everybody. In fact, we don't think that most people need vitamin D supplementation. There are some people that do. And so that is advised on a case by case basis. This is why we have people go through our program, is because they want that medical hand holding. They want an actual medical doctor. They're advising them on things like that, on vitamin D, and of course other things as well. But so I can't tell you like, yes, you should take it, or no, you shouldn't. It is so individual. And so like, that's something you're going to have to work with your doctor on, because you have to look at all the circumstances involved. You know, really, where is your vitamin D level? That's another thing is, you know, the standard range for vitamin D, you know, when you do your blood serum vitamin D level, is set at a range that is typical for a typical American. Well, we aren't typical Americans. We're not eating a bunch of meat and cheese and dairy that has been supplemented with vitamin D. And by the way, when you eat something like that, like dairy, for example, and it's super high in vitamin D, it's because it's been added. So it's like taking a supplement. So anyway, you definitely want to speak with your doctor. I agree with somebody who wrote in the comments that you want to ask a plant-based doctor. It is preferable to do that, because it is different for people who eat a plant-based diet than it is for standard Americans. So the range doesn't necessarily apply to us. And I think Kathy, I'm not sure if it was last time I was here, I think we talked a little bit about that, about how some of the standard ranges that are set for these things don't necessarily appropriately translate to people who are eating a whole food plant-based diet, because our levels just aren't going to ever be in the range of someone who's eating a bunch of foods that have been, you know, fortified with these things.
Yes, and we have talked about that for sure.
Yeah. This is yet another reason to come through the program and have Dr. McDougall, God rest his soul, miss him so much, Dr. Lim as your personal doctor for life, by the way. When you come through the program, you always, and this is the only way to become a patient of the McDougall Health and Medical Center, is you have to take the online 12-day program, or have done the in-person program back when we had that. But then at that point, you are a patient of our practice for life. That doesn't mean you always get to see Dr. Lim for free. No, it's his visits with him are fee-based, just like they are with any other doctor's office that you would go to. But you can visit with Dr. Lim, and Dr. Lim, being as incredible as he is and having the history and experience he has with plant-based medicine and lifestyle medicine, can advise you differently than other doctors that also went to medical school but don't have that nutritional piece in place to be able to advise someone who eats this way.
And I've got my computer and my comments up here, so I'm trying to go ahead and not lose questions. But like someone was saying, if you're currently supplementing, Justine was saying, how long do you need to be off them to get a baseline from a blood test? And my other question would be, do you need to go off of them before you get the blood test?
I'm not sure what Justine's situation is. Like, why are you going off of them? Why did you go on them to begin with? And all of that. So I think all of that those are great questions to discuss with the physician that is helping you walk through getting a handle on your vitamin D. Unfortunately, I just can't answer that for you.
Yeah, and I see where Angela was saying, you know, when it comes to vitamin D, ask a plant-based doctor. Here we go. Paul was wondering, is the vitamin B12 enough in oat milk? And even before I pass this on to you, it depends on the oat milk. Are you making it at home? Because if you are, then there's no B12 in there. Like someone else was saying, yeah, I get my vitamin D from almond milk. I'm like, not if you're making it at home, because those supplements are added, just like Stacy was talking about with dairy. And then are you putting a teaspoon of oat milk in your coffee, or are you making a big pot of soup with oat milk, right?
Right. And great point, Kathy. And the other thing is to remember that when oat milk or almond milk or those types of things have B12, it's because it's been fortified with B12. So it's literally the same thing as taking a supplement. And we do recommend taking a supplement just in the case of B12 regularly, because relying on your food intake does not seem to be as reliable of a source. For one thing, the levels are pretty low, and then like what happens if you don't have your almond milk for a little while? And it's just a little bit easier to just buy a supplement. They're very inexpensive. We don't make a big deal about what kind you need. You can go back and forth. I remember Dr. McDougall and Mary were taking, like, there's two different forms. There's the methylcobalamin and the cyanocobalamin, I believe. And people were always like, which one do I take? And Dr. McDougall's like, we take both. We just alternate, which I think is completely fine. I've never had issues with my B12, and I forget to take mine so frequently, it's embarrassing. I actually had, I think I told you, Kathy, I had like too high B12 at one point. So it's like, oh, okay, slow down on the B12. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't that high. But anyway, sorry, all of that to say, it is not necessarily better to get it from oat milk, even though you would think it would be because that's a food source. So I get where you're going with that, but it's been fortified. So it's really essentially like taking that supplement and then just throwing it in your almond milk or your soy milk. It's the same. It doesn't matter which way you get it, but it's a little bit easier to get it consistently when you're taking it in the form of a supplement than relying on your food.
I totally agree. And my B12 was high last year because I finally started taking it every day. Yeah. And I was taking the one from Costco, which was like 470 trillion.
Yeah, too much. And by the way, when you take one that's most of them unfortunately are way too high, like way more B12 than you need. So if you get one that's 4,000 or something like that, you only need 2.3 micrograms a day. It's like nothing, or 2.5, I believe. And so these ones are coming in like 2,500, 5,000, 4,000, whatever. Take it once a week. Twice a week, depending on the dosage. And then I tell people, hey, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and get the smallest dose that you can find. One of my patients, I actually think she's here today, told me one time that she sent me a link, one she found online that was like 10 micrograms or something. And I was like, that is the lowest I've literally ever seen. So if you want to go out there and knock yourself out trying to find the lowest and go for that, please go right ahead. I take one that I think is like 2,500 micrograms. And I just take it like once a week when I remember. But it's been fine for me so far. I would recommend that, if you're going to be continuing to see a doctor, like in our case, we see a doctor every year because of our insurance. We get like a certain amount of money into a flexible spending account if we do like a checkup every year. And so I just always tell my doctor, will you also run B12? Remember, I eat a plant-based diet. And she's always like, oh yeah, absolutely. And so she just throws that in and we check it and it's always fine. And
I'm a big proponent, at least, to get some of those labs done. If you're younger, you may not have ever had them done. Like I don't remember any of those things being really tested unless I had an issue that would go back to that. But probably when I turned about 45 or 40, the doctors will kind of say, oh, we're going to do these tests. So, and I think with our insurance too, I think now we have to do a physical that's separate from everything else. So if you're already doing that, it's easy to do. So Video 1000 Nights says, has Stacy ever seen people eating mostly potatoes get even better results when they add beans or add more beans? And so I'm going to translate how I see that question as kind of like, is there a starch combo that's optimal? Or we often hear like, what's the best starch to eat? I know I hear it, so I know you hear it all the time. But like, is there a good combo, or what do you do also?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, first of all, you do not have to eat beans at all. They are very health promoting. I would recommend it. If you don't have an allergy and you like them okay, even if you don't like them okay, I would continue to try to press through seeing, there's a million varieties of beans and lentils, and I would really be trying, and peas, I would really be trying to get some of those in your diet. I mean, bean intake, lentil and legume intake is associated with great health outcomes. Like that, science has proven that. And so we know that people who have beans in their diet do better. But, I think you shared one time, like Chef AJ's allergic to beans, so she didn't eat them. Does that mean she's not going to be okay? No, it doesn't. Not at all. Especially when you consider what the whole rest of our diet looks like. You are eating health promoting foods. So don't stress if you can't eat beans for some reason. Having said that, I do like to see people have beans and legumes in their diet regularly. When you ask about results, like would I get better results if I had beans in addition to potatoes? I don't know what results you're looking for, but I can assume that you mean weight loss. And that poses, and I'm glad you brought it up, a very interesting question, which is, okay, so potatoes are really weight loss friendly because they're very low in calorie density. You get more bang for your buck, meaning you can eat more potatoes for fewer calories than you can eat in the form of almost any other food, any other starch that's going to fill and sustain you. Potatoes are like that. Cooked oatmeal is like that. They're both very, very low in calorie density. However, because they're so low in calorie density, some people may not feel super full off of just potatoes or just oatmeal. They may find that for their bodies and their hunger and fullness cues, they do better with beans. So think about it this way. If you've decided, nope, I'm trying to lose weight as fast as possible, I'm just going to eat a bunch of potatoes. That's all I'm going to eat is just potatoes. But you aren't getting satiated personally, because it's very individual. You're not becoming satiated off of just potatoes. Then isn't it a better weight loss strategy in that case? If you find that lentils and beans are more filling, isn't it a better weight loss strategy for you to throw some of those in there with your potatoes and eat those so that you get fuller sooner and you stay fuller longer? Beans also have I forget what they call it. It's like an after meal effect. You may have heard of it, where when you eat beans and lentils, they make you full, not just in that moment and for those hours afterwards, but for like a day, for a full day, people report being more comfortable, more full, and not being as hungry for a full day after they've consumed beans and lentils. So there is something to that. Like, this person who's asking this question is clearly really paying attention to the messages out there. And so I can't say yes or no. Like, yes, you get better results without beans, or, yes, you get, you don't, it doesn't matter. It is so individual. And so I would say continue to be curious about your own body and continue to experiment with this in your own body. I will say, because you asked me, Kathy, what I do make sure that I have to eat beans and lentils every day. I personally do. I make a soup for lunch every day. And initially I was trying to do just like a potato and veggie soup. I have to have beans in there for it to feel filling for me. And I also just really love beans and lentils, and I love the way they make my body feel. And so for me, I do throw those in there. But that is not the case for everyone. I have people who are like, potatoes are absolutely, totally satisfying. I don't need anything else but potatoes and fruits and vegetables. And I'm like, you're fine. That's fine. Everybody's body's demands are different, and everybody's personal feeling of fulfillment of, when they eat a meal, how they feel fulfilled, that satiety, that fullness, like the combination of those things comes differently. So just get curious and pay close attention to your body.
That's such great advice, like always. And I like what you were talking about, because before we went just to you to talk about that, I was thinking, oh, a really easy way to get beans in is in soups. And you can do it, if you don't mind beans, drain a can of beans, put them in. Or if you made them homemade, take them out of the freezer, throw them in with your rest of your soup. But one of the things I do a lot is you could throw in a quarter to a half a cup of red lentils in just about anything, and they melt away. So like it's good to put in like, you can put it in with your marinara sauce, even if you bought some oil-free marinara sauce at Aldi's or something like that. And that's a good way to just add up a little extra filling. I will say, and with the pasta, because I can't have whole wheat anymore, and I really proved it to myself again this trip. Because I'm going to keep trying. And I'm like, ow, my joints are sore. But so we have chickpea and red lentil pasta. And both of those hold up really great in cooking, whereas some rice pasta and doesn't always. And Cheryl always talks about how much fuller she feels on a little bit less of it. So it's kind of interesting. I know there's a calorie difference and all of that as well, but just if you're like, I want to eat beans, you're not Chef AJ, you're not allergic to them, but you're just like, but I don't like beans. Growing up, I didn't like them, but I could have eaten them in pasta. I could have eaten them in other things if you want. Now, Elizabeth wants some holiday dinner advice. She says, I host holiday dinners and always try to make everyone happy by including their favorites, but it's caused me to slip up on my own diet. Any tips to successfully navigate this tricky situation? And I know you've got a list for us coming up.
Yeah, I have a couple big ones. The first one would be, make it a potluck, you guys. I know some of you are like cringing your brains out because you're used to being the one to make everything. And I understand that that's a whole thing. But if you want people to have their holiday favorites there, and you're finding that actually making them yourself is problematic, don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide one dish, and bring that. So that's one thing, is let people help you. It's okay. Let them bring their favorites and prepare their favorites. But the other one is, you need to be really rock solid on what your plan is before the meal comes. So if you're really trying to avoid those foods, but they're unavoidable in terms of their proximity to you, they're going to be here in the house, you're going to be sitting at a table with them, you need to have a rock solid plan for how you will react and interact with those foods. If you don't want to be eating them, then you need to decide ahead of time, I'm not eating that. And then you stick with it, because this is something I talk about a lot. Integrity, okay? So many of us, we pride ourselves on our integrity in the world, that you keep your integrity with people. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you say you're going to show up, you show up. That's important. That's a value that many of us hold dear and deep within us. But for whatever reason, we don't seem to hold that same value when it comes to personal integrity with and within ourselves. For whatever reason, we break our word to ourselves in a way that we would never dream of doing with our loved ones. If I tell my loved one, I'll be there to get you at 7:00, I'm going to be there at 7. And if I'm not, I'm going to be apologizing and making it up to them and all this stuff. Whereas if I tell myself I'm not eating meatloaf, and then I eat meatloaf, it's like, oh, well, it's like, why? Why are we so okay with breaking our word to ourselves and, letting ourselves, just not act with integrity towards ourselves? So give that some thought, about, okay, approaching Thanksgiving Day, I have told myself, I know the foods I can eat and want to be eating for my optimal health and feeling good in my body and getting through this holiday unscathed. I will not eat those foods. And because I'm trying to become a person of personal integrity, I will keep my word to myself. And I know it's like, it's certainly easier said than done, but when the rubber hits the road, I saw this thing, actually, I saw this yesterday. I think it was on Instagram. So powerful. This guy was talking about how when it comes down to it, you are the buck stops with you. You are the end of the road in every argument, every decision, everything that you do or don't do. It begins and ends with you. You are the only person who can do this for yourself or to yourself. And so that is an area I think we all need to work on, is where am I letting myself down? Where am I not keeping my word to myself? Because at the end of the day, from the day you were born to the day you die, you are your person. That's what he was saying. He's like, you're your person. You're raising yourself. It's like, even those of us who have parents who are alive, and loved ones who are alive that we see as our support person, and we turn to them for support. At the end of the day, it's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility. Not to get too deep. I know, I realize I just did, but it all comes down to that personal integrity, keeping your word to yourself and expecting that of yourself when you go into these more pressured social situations where you feel like you might lapse with your food.
It's so important what you said, and for me too. Like, I don't let Cheryl down on stuff, but I will let myself down in a heartbeat. Yeah. And I was kind of even wondering, because also Beth said switching our family gatherings from a sit-down dinners to potlucks has been a game changer, and I also know, as kind of like making a dinner, sometimes it can be hard. Especially maybe these are your adult children and you're making all of their favorite childhood things.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you couldn't try making them a little healthier too. So, and I don't know the exact situation either, but if there's some particular recipes you're wanting to make, whole food, plant-based, no oil, because I have an older recipe, I'm getting ready to redo it for crock pot sweet potatoes. And it has a brown sugar, vegan butter, and some nuts. It's from 2010. But you know what? I'm going to redo it, and I'm going to do it with spices and some pureed dates. And I was even thinking of possibly taking some chestnuts, toasting them, chopping them up for the crunch, because they just don't have the same calorie density as pecans. Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact where they are. They're crunchy, so they're not going to be like a potato, but so you would still get a lot of those familiar flavors in something like that. So I just want to propose some of that, because if you're used to making meatloaf, it's very easy to make a lentil loaf without nuts, without additional oil. So like over the years, I have changed some of those things. Now, if your family's used to meatloaf, then maybe we just start, and I do this sometimes when I'm having people over for dinner, that maybe I do make something richer. I'm still not going to saute things in oil, but I might put a little cashew cream in there or something like that. So depending on the situation, you might be able to meet in the middle a little bit, so that if you do have those sweet potatoes, with the whatever, that having that vegan marshmallow on there isn't such a big deal, because the rest of it isn't full of vegan butter and oil or butter and cream. So that's one thing I just kind of wanted to say. And I think too, like one of the things we're doing now is we're going back. For the pandemic, we didn't go to the vegan Thanksgiving sit-down dinner. It's like the biggest in the country. But I love going there. And you might be like, wait, isn't that dangerous? It's a big giant buffet. But I take my plate, I get a little bite of all the different things I want. If there was something extravagant, one year I got 3 bowls of soup. It was the soup, and it was a different place, and it was amazing. So at some other times, maybe I get a second on mashed potato and gravy. And all the desserts are teeny tiny. So I can have a couple without it being like I had 6 pieces of pie. I had a bite of pie, this pie, a bite of that pie. And that helps me get the flavors I want And none of it, when I come home, is in my house. So I didn't make 7 pies and cut it into tiny pieces, and now I have 7 pies in my house. So
Right. Yeah.
So if
And
there,
just
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I can't remember who it was that originally said the thing about, it's what happens between New Year's and Christmas, and it's not the other.
Marcus.
Which is true, Marcus. That is true. Like I said, I agree with that. But the bigger piece that you're like what you're describing right now about going to the vegan buffet, and is it dangerous? It's like it's only dangerous if you don't know your boundaries. So, meaning if you have decided, hey, I'm going to the vegan buffet for one meal of the year, that is not going to move the needle one way or the other on your health. Doing something once, I mean, just imagine if I got in my car and drove down to the gym and got a free weight and did a bicep curl and then demanded to have a muscle. It's never going to happen. You have to do behaviors repeatedly, consistently to see results one way or the other. And so unless you're consistently tripping up over going to buffets and eating oil-laden vegan food, one time, a one-off is not going to make or break you. So put it into perspective. The person who was just asking about the meal that she was making, for her family and feeling tripped up by those foods. It's like, well, decide, do you want to indulge in those foods or not? If the answer is yes, I do want to indulge in those foods, you're not a bad person. There actually is nothing wrong with that. You get to decide. You don't owe this to anyone but yourself. And so if you want to indulge at your Thanksgiving meal, that's fine. The place where I see people get tripped up is not because they did it. It's because they did it without boundaries in place for themselves. They did it without saying, all right, I'm doing this, but this is a one-off experience that I will do one time a year for Thanksgiving. I will have these foods, and then it's right, the very next meal, it's right back to my normal McDougall way of eating.
I like the way that you're talking about that too. And one of the things I was thinking, if I was in that position, what I would do is get either some of those to-go boxes. They have the little metal things. Mm-hmm. If you're not afraid of aluminum, if you don't like aluminum, you could trust your children, hopefully, with your containers. Or put a little apple chip on them so you can go find them wherever they put them. But like to make sure it's gone. I've had parties before and I'm like, all of this is going to be gone. I'm keeping X amount for tomorrow's lunch. If it's that of the healthier or the healthy things that fit into what I'm doing. And one of the reasons I like going to the buffet better, even if I'm just going over to my friend's house and I've made 7 things and I leave most of it with them, they're going to send me home with something. So there's definitely going to be more food in play. So it's a little more expensive for us to go to Thanksgiving out, sort of. But in the end, yeah, in the end it works out. And in fact, this last year we took you guys with us. We sat, Cameron and I showed you what I got from the buffet and I was like, ooh, this one's good, right? And we just hung out for people who maybe didn't have Thanksgiving, someone to spend, or they don't have a buffet like that or a community. And so, because I think what can be hard about holidays is it's about community and family and things like that. And if you've lost some of that, or that can be really painful and super, super difficult. So you kind of have to be kind to yourself too. Are you okay? Yeah. Okay. So there's been a lot going on in the background.
A lot going on.
So, anyhow, it's, you have to think about that too. And like, how can you spend community and what does that look like? And for Cheryl and I, for our community, for you guys, we promised to show up on every winter holiday, and you hung out with us at Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. We made some Thanksgiving dinner together. We did Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and we made a fondue that's whole food, plant-based, no oil, all the things. So while it can be really hard, especially if you're dealing with family over friends, to kind of do some of those things. One of the things I always do if I'm going to someone else's house is I bring 2 things to eat, going, oh, you guys probably won't want this, but you're welcome to try it. And it's always gone, right? Like even when I brought soy curls to like serious meat eaters, I'm like, they're going to be like, that's weird soy stuff. Oh no.
They chowed on that.
So get yours first. And we're going to talk about this for the next 3 months. Get yours first.
Exactly.
Because you'll be
Love
left
it.
with a taste, and then you'll be like, oh, all I can eat now are chips and salsa.
Right.
But, and you can be the person who brings the chips you made in your air fryer. And that's okay. Like if you're like I can tell you right now, if I know I'm going somewhere and there's going to be chips, I got to bring my own. Because I'm going to want one, and I'm not going to stop at one. And so usually we don't have that. We don't have that in our house. I have to go ahead and make them if I'm going to have a dip or something like that. But just look, like what Stacy's saying, look and see what's going to work with you that's going to help you keep to your goals. If you have trouble keeping to your goals, Stacy, what do you think about like a buddy system? Like it helps for Cheryl and I to be on this. Everybody isn't going to be on the same path. It really helps that Cheryl is. And so even on our vacation when we're making some choices, we talk about it. Mm-hmm. We don't always make the perfect choice, but I have someone who understands. I can go, this is my goal this week. Or if Cheryl says, this is my goal, and I can go, okay, I'm not telling you what you can eat, but do you remember what you told me yesterday? Has that changed? And it can be hard in a marriage to separate it and I go, you said.
Or we could be someplace and, like there's something on the menu that we really, really want to taste for like recipe development type thing. Like when we were in Pleasantville and they had that bolognese sauce with the spiral noodles.
That was super healthy.
But it had oil in it. Okay.
Do I eat whole food plant-based, no oil, 80 to 90% of the time? Absolutely. For going out, literally it's a little bowl with some, I think it was chickpea pasta and spiralized zucchini, half of each, lentils, vegetables, and a sauce. And you couldn't even see the oil on it. Yes, and I'm not trying to say there was no oil in it, but it was not dripping in oil. So some places you'll go to a vegan restaurant and you're like, oh. Because if I'm having a lentil bolognese and I see little piles of oil, that's a lot of oil. That's more than it takes, even in a restaurant, they can use a tiny bit to saute an onion without making it this big, giant, I've just added 600 calories to your thing. Mm-hmm. And so with us being out, they didn't have an oil-free option. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a pretty good compromise. You got lots of vegetables, you were full, you didn't snack after it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe there's some other questions you would ask Stacy about that.
It's one of the best meals I think I had while we were gone.
Yeah. I'll just say this. So a lot of people, they hear that the McDougall program is a no animal products, no oil dietary plan. And when we say no oil, we mean no added oils, no added fats. No, oils is the right word, not fats. So what we're talking about when we say that is processed oils, like it doesn't matter what it is, coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, all of them, guys, all of the oils, canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, it's all stuff we want you to avoid, because anytime you're adding oil in, you're adding highly processed, isolated fat. You're dumping fat onto your food. Remember, fat is the issue in a lot of our health issues. But also your oil can be inflammatory and you're just adding a ton of calories. So for weight loss and for, disease reversal and optimal health, we believe that no added oils is best. Now, Kathy and Cheryl both know that. They know the whole thing. They went through the program. But what they're demonstrating right now that is so beautiful is that what the McDougall diet is and what the McDougall program is that, hey, you come to us, you want us to teach you what is likely the diet that's going to get you the best, most optimal health outcomes and the best results that you are seeking. And we lay the whole thing out for you and we tell you why, and we give you all the science to back it and all that stuff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you don't owe this to anybody. You get to decide what to do with that information. And so if you go to a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and they have this bolognese, this beautiful, vegetables and lentils and pasta and sauce and all this stuff that Kathy just described, it sounds amazing. And Cheryl said it was one of the best meals of her life. Okay. They have that, or they have a cheeseburger. And you're going, well, this bolognese has oil in it, so I might as well just get the cheeseburger. No. Okay. What you need to do, or what's your third option? Not to eat, right? So you get to decide. Am I going to be so staunch about my stance on oil that to me, in my mind, eating something with oil is the same thing as eating fried, fried chicken sandwich? Am I equating the two like they're... Some people will need to draw the line at no oil, right where we recommend it. Because for them to open the door to a little oil here and there is fine, is like opening a Pandora's box, and they don't know where the door or how to close the door again. That's why we put it at no oil. Because if we said like, oh, well, you can have a teaspoon of oil. Okay, like when? And they didn't measure the oil. How much was that? That's probably a teaspoon. And then we can end up fooling ourselves into basically sabotaging ourselves. That's why the line is at no oil. But then you get to decide for your own personal health journey and your goals and all of that, what you do in a situation like what Kathy and Cheryl are expressing and sharing with us. Now, having said that, when we lay out the story and the reasons and the science and all that stuff for you, we say not, okay, go do this perfectly or else. We say the closer you can adhere to these guidelines and principles, the more likely it is that you will have the health outcomes you seek, and the sooner you will probably get them. So meaning the more you adhere, the better your outcomes will likely be. And then you, once again, you get to decide what to do with that information.
Yeah. And there used to be days when I would always go, I'm going to take the cheeseburger, right? But I don't do that anymore because I have been educated and I know that there's a huge difference.
And while we do wholeheartedly agree, and we don't cook with oil in the house, the only reason I didn't get rid of my olive oil was because we were putting it on a dog toy treat thing to open it and close it. That's what we've used oil for in the past 14 months. That's it. That's the only reason it's here. And I think for me, I feel like it's important to let people know that we're not doing it absolutely perfectly and that our goal is 80 to 90%, because I think, and we talked about this with Tiffany too, is that like in some of the McDougall Facebook groups, which are not associated with the McDougall program or Dr. McDougall, it's a Facebook group talking about the Starch solution and things, that they can be really strict, and sometimes some of the groups are even quite mean to people. And that's the only reason too I like to be like, okay, look, and if ever anything we say or we're doing feels like it's not for you, we're not trying to tell you to do what we do. I just want to be honest and transparent about what we do, and then give you insight on how we were making some of our choices. And if that helps you, take it. If it's something, if you're like, yeah, I would eat my apple in the car and be fine, then that's what you should do. And we would never suggest you do anything that feels wrong to you. And getting your health like we're ready to get back on track. We were talking with Stacy about it. We've talked to each other about it. And I'm even planning a new series to help do all that. So I think that sometimes we either think it has to be all or nothing. And for many people, there are some wiggle room. Because I remember the first time we went on vacation, I was like, well, I had a muffin. And I'm like, I had a vegan muffin with my coffee. And you're like, okay, you're on vacation. And I was ready for you to just like read me up one side and down the other. And how dare you have a muffin? It's so early, blah, blah, blah.
She was ready to be all kinds of yelled at.
And some of it is from reading things that are not
Would
associated.
never do that.
I know you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't in a million years.
Right.
But you remember, we're the people the first day were like, we ate 2 bowls of oatmeal, and we were ready for you to yell at us about that. Because it takes so long to wrap your mind around things. And kind of from our weirdness, that's why we're talking about things. That's why we've said, yeah, we had a hard time, and we gained a little weight back. And we're working to get back there, and that's okay. Because I feel like so many people who talk about the starch solution or a specific diet, they're not necessarily as forthcoming with roadblocks as they are successes.
Yeah.
That's all. It's not to say, come into the roadblock with me. No. And Stacy, I know it's 2:37. Do you have a little more time? Oh, you go ahead.
I probably need to wrap it up. If there's another, like, I can do rapid fire just to make sure we get to all the questions, and then I probably need to wrap it all up after that.
Okay.
So I'll be fast in my answers. How about that?
Okay. Let's see if I can. Okay, Mona says, what happens when a type 2 diabetic takes insulin prior to a sugary fatty drink? What happens to the glucose?
I wouldn't recommend you do that. If we're talking about like, oh, let me take
Oh, she
my
meant
insulin
sugary
and then
drink.
go have a milkshake. Ooh, don't do.
Oh, prior to a sugary
Fatty.
fat drink, not surgery. So, okay.
A sugary and fatty drink, like a milkshake type of thing, I assume is what she's talking about.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm like, what else is sugary and fatty? That would be a milkshake. Yeah. Your insulin will escort, well, your body, what will happen? The insulin will help drive your blood glucose down, but that doesn't take away the assault that type of thing has on your body. So it doesn't remove, the inflammation, the huge sugar spike and the excess fat and calories that will be stored in your body in the form of body fat. So it's hard because sometimes when people ask a question like that, I'm trying to read between the lines, but I don't want to assume anything.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
I don't know
if
that question really applies to probably most people.
But if you're trying to figure out if you can like take some insulin and then get away with eating something like that and it not impacting you or not causing a spike or anything, it's still going to impact you negatively. It's still going to cause a spike, because if you're taking it as a maintenance dose and then have that, you kind of counteracted what you just did. So, you can't.
Nothing happens in your body in isolation.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Okay. Where do you get iron on a plant-based diet? Ended up having iron infusions because mine got so low.
Well, without knowing anything about your medical history at all, or your height or your weight or anything, I would say, if you are routinely running low on iron, that's definitely something you and your doctor need to work through together. But there's iron in greens, there's iron in all kinds of beans and legumes and things like that. For most people, that will be sufficient. There's always the outlier anomaly, case where someone just, for different reasons, there could be absorption issues, they could have issues with other like digestive issues and things like that cause them to not keep their iron. But eating iron-rich foods with a source of Vitamin C is beneficial. Vitamin C increases the absorption of iron. So if you're going to have a salad, like a spinach salad or something, have some peppers, red pepper strips on that salad, or have it with an orange or something like that. That helps.
Okay, and someone asked, how do they find a plant-based doctor? If you look in the chat, Apple put in a good place to go and look. Chris wants to know, is too much B12 bad for your body?
They have not been able to detect an upper level of B12 intake that is associated with poor health outcomes, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it hasn't been discovered yet. That's why we don't recommend these massive mega doses of B12, just as we wouldn't recommend you take the highest possible quantity of any supplement if you were in a position that you had to take it. We want to keep it as low as possible in order to get the results. So no. Some people are symptomatic with high B12. Kathy, you've shared that here before. Some people do report symptoms with high levels of blood B12. But no, there isn't a number that I can give you that says like, oh, when you get to this point, that's bad. They just don't know yet.
Okay, and I think this is going to be close to the last question. Just wondering if TVP or textured vegetable protein is considered starch solution approved. Then wants to know if it is, how to cook it, and we can talk about that.
Yeah, no, not, what is it made out of, Kathy? Remind me.
Well, TVP is a more processed product than soy curls, even though they're both typically made with soy. TVP has some other processes.
It is soy. Okay.
Yeah, they're both soy. TVP tends to be dirtier. It's not usually organic or marked non-GMO for people who are looking for that. Soy curls are non-GMO. So it's a small company. So literally they take a soybean, they squish it and extrude it, and it looks like chicken strips. It looks like a lot more was done. With TVP, I think they may remove the fat, and there's definitely other processes happening. But it looks like a ground product.
Got it. Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I think there's a delay. It sounds like I'm interrupting you, but I'm not. It's because we're delayed, and I'm sorry. But the TVP is not, when you ask, is it starch solution approved? It is not a natural whole plant food. It's not in its whole natural form. So it would be like sometimes, occasionally, it might be okay if it's made without oil or animal products, but it's still soy, and soy is not starch. So remember, soy is fine to eat as long as you don't have an allergy or something like that, but it's higher in fat. And remember, we're trying to bring the fat nice and low. So soy in and of itself is more of like a more occasional thing rather than being the center of your meals. So it's probably okay to use sometimes, but I would not rely on it on a daily or even necessarily weekly basis.
That makes perfect sense to me. And we'll end with this one. Mel was saying, Kathy, are you happy with your health results after starting the McDougall program? And I will say yes. During the program, I lost, I think, 30 pounds, like not during the 12 days, but during that first initial time. In general, I kept it off for more than a year. I feel like I've probably gained I haven't weighed yet. I'm guesstimating like 5 to 7 pounds with all the stress and stuff. So it's not like I gained all 30 pounds back this past month, and that has nothing to do with the McDougall program and everything with my stress level. And what I love about the program is that it's not a thing that now that I've done that, Stacy is going to shun me and anything like that. It's not a thing. It's a community. It's a place you go and you get help, and you see, like there were 6 months, it was a lot easier than another 6 months. And you just don't know what's going to happen. So what I like about the program the most, there are two things. One is that I can have all the potatoes I want, which is like a big plus. I just don't, to me, I'm like, if anyone gave me a choice of it and other diets, I can have potatoes, thank you. I can have mashed potatoes, thank you. And then the other thing is it's not super hard. You can have, you can make it as simple as we made the same oatmeal in the morning. I can have rice and vegetables. I can have soups. I can have Indian food. I can make it as complicated as I want too. Like I can make my pumpkin spice oatmeal and make things flavorful. So that's what I like. It fits me for when I'm like, okay, I need a little lockdown to, okay, I need a little real flavorful treat, and it still fits right into the starch solution.
Well, and also it's simple enough. The basics of it are simple enough that if you're having a day where you just don't have any spoons left and you can't really think about, I just can't think about dinner, it's very easy to just grab some rice, grab some vegetables, and be done with it. You don't have to really think about it. You just have to heat it up. And that makes it really, really helpful too.
Yeah. So we love it, and we are happy that we went through the 12-day program on good days and on bad days, if that helps at all.
If I had it to do over again, I would have started right from day one.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, Stacy. And I'm sorry, it does look like your picture's getting fuzzy, so I think the internet connection is lagging a little bit, so I apologize for that. Thank you, as always, for just coming in and just being so awesome. I mean, I adore you, and you know that. And also, you guys don't know.
I adore you guys. Thank you.
She names a name on her thing whenever she comes in, and so it's always something. Like one time it was Beyonce, and and I love it. So I mean, it's just great, and I'm so happy that we have you in our life, period, and I really appreciate you sharing all of your great wisdom with the community. And we'll be seeing you every month.
My pleasure. So fun to be here.
Awesome. Well, okay, guys,
Yes.
Thank you so much. If
Yeah,
you have more
absolutely.
questions that didn't get answered now, go ahead and go back and put them in the comments. Stacy usually pops by, and she might give you a little fairy magic of an answer. Okay, you guys have just the very best day. Be kind to yourself, commit to yourself, and really try and do what Stacy was saying and look inward and see what your goals are. Be introspective and go ahead and follow through with that.
Absolutely.
All right, we will talk to you guys